Hi students, it's Mrs. T again, and this is the second of 3 short lectures that you're required to watch during week 8, our first week of our social stratification unit. Okay, so the information in this video goes along with chapter 7 in our textbook, so it's some foundational information about social stratification in general. So if you haven't watched lesson 1, watch that one first. But then this one is our next step in understanding this macro scale issue called social stratification. So, social mobility is a concept that goes along with the idea of the ladder metaphor over here. So remember, in the first lecture, this ladder represented macro scale society. It still does. It always will. Whenever I show a ladder, the entire ladder will represent macro scale society, whether we're talking about the US society, Canada society, Mexico society, the society in the Bahamas, wouldn't it be nice to live there except in hurricane season? And the different rungs on the ladder, or steps on the ladder, represent the different categories of people that are considered unequal to each other based on their access or control to social resources or basic resources that exist in a society. The achieved statuses that we tend to use in the USA the most often are income, occupation, and education level. And so we combine those in the USA to calculate where you are on this social ladder, you and other members of your category of people. However, the USA is not entirely unique in the world, but we have this concept called the American Dream. And even though everybody from Canada all the way down to Chile and Argentina and the southern tip of South America and everybody in between is technically American from a continental identity point of view, in the USA we have this concept called the American Dream, which essentially, and we'll get the definition written on the board soon, but essentially the American Dream is the idea that if you play by the rules of society, the U.S. society rules are set up in such a way that you should be able to achieve your goals in life. You should be able to achieve happiness and success. And that is essentially what the sociological definition of the American Dream is. But this is because in the USA we have what's called an open system of social mobility. Because of social stratification, an open system of social stratification, because we have social mobility, that concept built into our socialization process. We are taught that we can be whatever we want to be. And definitely after we had our first African American president, African American males were also finally told that they could be anything that they wanted to be. And when we finally have a first female president, females will perhaps begin to believe that we can be anything that we want to be if we work by the rules and play by the rules and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. I'm getting a little ahead of myself with that, however, because this is not where we start talking about gender or racial stratification. This is still just about basic access to social resources, such as power, which those things relate to, but also income, occupation, and education level. That's where we're starting. So back up, Mrs. T. I don't need to get ahead of myself with bringing gender and race into the mix just yet. That's chapter 9 or something like that. So, social mobility. Social mobility is the ability to move within the framework of social stratification in your particular culture. Now, worldwide, not every place gives you the ability to move. Some places have what we call closed systems of social stratification. That means your ascribed status, the status in society that is assigned to you at birth through no willful action of your own, is the position where you are in your social stratification is set for life. It is ascribed to you, and social mobility is not possible in a closed system of social stratification. Your textbook uses the example of a caste famous caste system comes from India, the country of India in Asia, where the religion, Hinduism, has within its sacred texts, its sacred beliefs, that not everyone is created equally, that there are different castes of people, not classes of people, but castes of people, and if you are born into a particular caste, there you must stay based on the rules of society, which come from the rules of religion. So I know some of you had some questions back when we were talking about social institutions. How are they connected? How do they affect each other? In this particular example I'm giving you, the social institutions of inequality and religion are linked significantly in the caste system of India, because the foundations for the inequality come from the religious stories and the fundamentals of religious belief that a huge number within the population hold to be true. So in a closed system of social stratification, you cannot move any kind of way, not up, like that's the direction we want to think of on the ladder, not down, that's definitely a direction on the ladder, we just don't want to think about that direction, especially when we're talking about the American dream concept, or side to side, which would mean maybe your parents, you were born into a family of police officers and you now are an EMT or something, right? So that would be within, from one generation to the next, side by side, or horizontal. This is called vertical social mobility. If you go up or down, down's not a direction we want to think about typically, or horizontal. If we stay on the same rung but we're relatively the same income, occupation, and education level combined. Those things are combined into what kind of status? One word, hyphenated word, socioeconomic status. I heard somebody say it. So, social mobility in the USA and other places where they have open systems of social stratification, you can, let me scratch out this X here, let me erase that X, because social mobility is possible. You can move up, down, or side to side, either from one generation to the next, like so many of us are motivated to be in college on a personal level because previous generations wanted something better for us in our generation. And so they might not know the word socioeconomic status, but they sure know enough to know that education level is part of how you achieve a better occupation that has a better income. And so a lot of us are pushed that direction because some of us use the concept of one generation to the next, grandpa to papa to me, in order to understand or in order to witness the social mobility in the class system that we have in the United States. So social mobility where it's allowed, open systems where it's allowed, social mobility is, it can happen within one's own lifetime or it can happen from generation to generation. In the United States, we have social mobility, it is allowed, and in other places where closed stratification systems exist, ascribed statuses control your access to social resources. You can think of social mobility as access to a social resource. If it is ascribed to you at birth, you're not going to be able to take advantage of self-improvement, whether it's from one generation to the next or whether it's just within your own lifetime. So in our next short video, I'm going to talk about life chances that I mentioned to you, and that's where we really start talking about the reality of how easy it is or is not in open systems. Is it easy or is it not so easy to actually make these moves for ourselves in our lifetime or from one generation to the next? So life chances is a really major concept that you need to understand thoroughly for you to be able to understand this, and that's what the next video is going to be about. And let me figure out how to close this. Something popped up on my screen, so I can't close this. There, now I found it. Okay, so next video, life chances. Please take good notes, rewind, get me out of the way and take a picture of this screen so that you can see what's going on here. Oh, now that I turn around and look at this screen, I left out a conversation about this concept slavery down here, because slavery is a fixed position within either an open stratification system or a closed stratification system. So there can be a mix, in other words, between open systems and closed systems. Some of the positions within open systems can be ascribed, like slaves are ascribed that status without consent of their will. So we will look into this much more deeply, especially when we look at Marxist philosophy and the class system. Definitely capitalism is something that created, the economic system of capitalism is something that created the possibility and the, I'm not going to say necessity, it created the desire of ownership of social resources, and the social resources I'm talking about right now is slavery in this case, because capitalism is about profit, and if I don't have to pay you, my profit goes up. So that's also another lecture, and I will see you again on YouTube. Thank you for your attention. Text me.